Welcome to the Amy and Britta Show. I am Britta LaFont from BrittaLaFont.com.
And I'm Amy Young from MessyMiddle.com.
And we are celebrating Advent. We're making sure that we don't barrel through the Christmas season, that we stop and we pause and we wonder at all the things that Jesus has done. And so this is the third week of Advent, right?
Yes, I can't believe it.
I know, right? It's gone fast. And then, so we wanted to start with talking about the theme of the week. So do you want to jump in, or do you want me to share my little quote? Maybe I'll start with my quote, and then you can jump in.
Let's do that.
Okay,
yes.
Let's do that. Okay, so this is the book that one of the books I have been looking at. Let's see, can you read it?
Yes, Living the Christian Year.
Nice, very good. Okay, and so it's by Bobby Gross, and he talks about, for the third week, he says, we are growing more aware of Christmas Day approaching with all its bright celebration. Still, we must wait, and this is good practice. Like the faithful Israel in their day, we wait for the earth-shattering advent of God, believing in his second arrival in history that it will put the world right and heal our lives. But we also watch for signs of his coming in our present experience. So when we see social justice or human flourishing or personal renewal, whether large or in scale or small, we experience joy, which is a foretaste of the everlasting jubilation that will be ours on the day that we come singing into Zion. So I like that quote because he's talked about this before, and he's talking about the basically what he calls the three comings of Christ. So when he came into the world as a baby, when he will return for his second coming, and that he is always coming in our hearts. Like he's come into our hearts, and we experience him here now.
See, I love that because I think it's so easy to pick a side. Am I totally focused on the future? Am I totally focused on now? And, I just think we're called to be, yes, we're focused on both, and that he's coming now too. I love that.
Yeah, and it's funny because you and I were talking before the show.
Oh, yes.
We were talking about how, yet in this season of joy, and we've been talking about this all along, we were seeing difficulties, we're seeing hardships, and things that make us want to grieve, and yet we're supposed to have joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be hard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you were mentioning several of your friends that have had hard things. And this is the thing with hardness is it's different levels. I hope I'm not betraying a big trust. Yeah. Your daughter's fish died today.
I know.
And then on one hand, that'd be so easy to be like, oh, that's so cute. But for your daughter, that is a significant loss. And to not belittle that. And then good friends of mine had a nephew commit suicide this week, very unexpectedly. And so, yeah, I mean, it has totally, it's changed everything because it's a very unexpected death. This is a grown man with children. He was supposed to pick his kids up at school and didn't.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Yes. And so it's the whole family. Did we miss something? Did we not, love him enough? Or what did we miss? How have we failed him as a family? Mm-hmm. And just what it's going to mean for his personal family and then the extended family.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to say forever, but forever in this life.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's something that they will never get over. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it can be very discouraging when we see the things that go on in this life. And so I had written this down. I was feeling very poetic, so I wrote it down. And I was just thinking about how as we light more candles, as the light in Advent grows, it's supposed to represent the coming of Christ as it's growing, right? And yet still the darkness seems to try to encroach. Like as the light wants to expand, the darkness seems to want to encroach, and it can be really. I think when we see those two things next to each other is when we see this chasm that we've talked about all this time. This difference between the two, and it can be really disheartening because of the difference between the two. Yeah. And so I thought it would be great for you to talk a little bit today about the whole idea of being in the middle. Like, what's this about being in the middle? Like, I'm an all or nothing gal. I mean, that has always been a problem for me. I'm like all over something, or I have nothing to do with it. I mean, it is just so much a core part of me. And yet I have been trying to move away from that for so long. And it's hard. It's hard to be comfortable in the middle, right?
Yeah. Well, yes, because the middle, often how I also kind of picture it is it's kind of this point and you're sitting on the top. And how do we relieve a tension? You know, you roll to one side or the other. Yeah. And that's why, you know, the messy middle, if you look at my tagline, it's the messy middle is where grace and truth reside. Because it's easier, I think, for many people to pick a side. I'm either about the truth, God's truth, and like, or I'm all about grace, and love and happiness, and, you know, like, let's not. But we're called to live with that tension, that God's truth is true, and yet there's grace. And so living with that, and I think, you know, even this Advent, talking about how do we actively wait? How are we preparing and creating room for peace? How do we rejoice and have joy in the messiness? And I think that is where I'm just reminded, somehow our culture has told us we have to pick a side.
Yeah.
And God is like, I am so much bigger than a side. That you, all of us within ourselves have so much more space in our souls that we can rejoice, you know, going to kids' concerts or watching kids do things, or just the presents, the fun part of Christmas. It doesn't have to totally be negated. I think it's informed by suffering. It's informed. Yeah, and so instead, I think we sort of feel like I have to pick. Either it's all darkness or it's all light. And going, no. The light, the reason we have the hope is because the darkness is real. And so we need the hope. We need to rejoice. And we don't rejoice like this fake rejoicing. We rejoice because we still see that coming of the kingdom, God's presence in the messiness.
Well, and in some ways, and this might sound jarring, but in some ways we need the darkness too. Because without the darkness, we wouldn't see the light. We wouldn't see our need for the light. And so I have been struck as I've seen some things that have been hard for friends, that it's like without those difficulties, heaven wouldn't look like such a great place. We'd think like, well, I've got everything I need right here. Yeah. Why do I need, you know? And it's like the ugliness, the difficulties, those are the things that kind of make us press in and realize our need for Jesus. Yeah. But, you know, it's interesting about that whole middle part, because I've always, like said, struggled with that. Yeah. And that whole idea of grace and truth and the tension between the two, that you really need them both. And like, but how do you know, I just wanted to give up on the whole idea. Like, I can't figure it out. And I read this book, and I can't remember. No, the author is Lois Tverberg, and she's written in Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus, and she's also Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus. Okay. I can't remember which book it's in, but she talks about a very Hebrew way of thinking is thinking with both hands. So, like,
I'm Hebrew. I didn't know I was Hebrew.
Oh yes. And so she talks about, like, for instance, if we're talking about grace and truth, it would be like there's grace and there's truth, and then well, in the middle is where we find God, because is it one or the other? It's both, really. But the part of God that is so hard for us to grasp is that He can easily have both.
Right.
And that's our finite way. That's our humanness, our limitedness. And we forget that God is not limited like us. Right. You know, we see Him through our own eyes, but that way that He can balance it all, it's just, So, okay, but what I also wanted to do is I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of bringing this messiness and this whole idea of Advent and all of that into the whole Christian year. Right. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about the title of Kimberly's book.
Well, I love Kimberly Conway Ireton's book. It's called The Circle of Seasons. And again, just reminding us that this Advent is pointing to something else. It's pointing to Christmas, which is going to be pointing to Epiphany, to ordinary time, and on then into Lent. That these are not isolated events, and it's the circle. It will happen again next year. And it will happen again when your children are grandmas. You know what I mean? That we're part of this circle.
Yeah.
So how does that then relate to a project you've been working on?
Okay, so thank you for that nice segue.
Yes.
So it's been in my heart because of the whole idea of that middle place
Yeah.
has just been stuck in me for a while. I've been thinking about before and after pictures, how we love to see, like I love to see HGTV do a before and after bathroom or a before and after kitchen, right?
Right.
And we like to see like the before and after like workout makeover. Maybe it'll inspire us to see this person who's, you know, gotten so fit and fabulous. You know, maybe we'll want to do that too. And it's the before and after that we've fallen in love with. And yet, at the same time, I mean, we don't want to be the before. We totally want to be the after.
Right.
But most of life is lived in the middle. And so the whole idea that you cannot be this fit and fabulous gal unless you have a healthy lifestyle. And so your life needs to not be about the fit and the fabulous gal picture. It needs to be about the healthy lifestyle. So for me, the idea was that Lent is something that is the greatest after, right? It points to this after where Jesus is resurrected and he rights the wrongs and he does the thing he came to do. And yet, at the same time, what it did was it ushered in a life for us that we will continue to live on earth. We don't get like, you know, yes, Lord Jesus, I love you. And then we're like, you know, carried away to heaven forever. And we don't have to think about life. You know, we have to live life, right? And so the whole idea for the project is to do before and after pictures and then keep in mind what happens in the middle, because life is lived in the middle. And so anyway, it's called the Meet Me in the Middle Project, and we're going to put links in our blog post and in the YouTube video so you guys can get to the website. And I know Lent seems a long way off, but it is something to be thinking about now because of the circle of seasons, because it's something, not only is it a circle that goes on every year, but it's a circle that we walk in our lives again and again, sometimes in the same day.
Well, so, that's the truth.
Yeah. So, okay. So next week we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to do our video earlier in the week because Christmas.
I know. What we've been waiting for, what we've been preparing for is coming.
It's coming. Okay. So we're going to post our video on Wednesday of next week, right? Okay.
And so my theme for next week is love. So I love that.
Yes. Yeah. I love that.
I know. How about, what's your theme?
Mine is also love.
Perfect.
So isn't it awesome? Yeah, we've come together finally. Like it's interesting. Like but you remember yours was action words. It was prepare. It was active
rejoice.
Waiting. Yeah, rejoice. Love. Love is an action, right? And my words have been like hope, peace, rejoice. No, hope, peace, joy, and love. And so it's interesting how love is a word that does more than one thing. Yeah. So, okay, great.
Well, I hope you have a great week, Britta.
You too. And we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, great. Thanks.